Namaste. Myself Sachchida Nand, Assistant Professor, Department of Mechanical Engineering, Uttar Institute of Technology. So, as the continuation of this introduction to materials engineering, we are now proceeding towards our next slide and discuss what are the various prospects and the facts which are related to the materials engineering in the continuation. So, in the continuation of that introduction of materials engineering, we are reached towards the waterway system, that how materials affect the transportation and safety in the waterways. As in the sea, there's a lots of ships are roaming. So what are the safety and what are their working environment conditions? These points need to be taken care. And a biggest example for taking care of that safety of transportation during transportation in waterways, one of the biggest example was the Titanic. As it is shown in this figure and in this slide, the Titanic on its maiden voyage from Southampton, UK to New York City, RMS Titanic sank in the North Atlantic on April 15, 1912 on colliding with an iceberg. So, the first journey of that historical Titanic ship was sank on 15 April 1912 by the collision of iceberg. So, after that collision, engineers were accumulating the data to analyzing what really was happened. So, an analysis done on the hull steel years later provided the material aspects of this tragedy. So, after this tragedy, after investigation, that particular material, that what happened with that particular material after colliding with that iceberg, that it was found that the hull of the ship was made of riveted steel plate. That the first. And the quality and the composition of steel is crucial for the required properties and the performance. Obviously, as from the beginning we are talking about these things, that any product which is going to be produced or going to be designed, their requirement, their properties, their materials are very important things to be considered regarding designing of any kind of product. So for that consideration, this particular Titanic is also related to that. A very interesting story about that Titanic, that the engineer who created that ship was very much confident that this Titanic is the very much engineered, as you can say, a piece of engineering at that time, and they are very proud that this is its kind of one time, and it will lead to the world with this example. But what happened? Whenever we move in our extremity of assumptions that we are the best, then the nature or the certainties always telling us from some certain point that there is something to be do more in that to be a best. And that is the biggest example shown in that Titanic, when that particular Titanic was sunk in 1912. So what was the problem? The problem was the material impact strength, the brittle, ductile to brittle nature. We will discuss in later class what is the effect of that particular fracture, the ductile to brittle. That was the problem when the material was traveling into that cold water. The tendency of material was changed. That is change its tendency from the ductile to brittle due to the low temperature. That is the low working temperature, and that the thing the engineers later on founded that the problem by which that particular Titanic was sunk. And the another that thing that they created a riveted joint as steel plate. That is the another kind of experiment which they found, and the story which I told you, that was the another experiment found for that particular metal. And from their point of view, they as we know, if any kind of mistake, it leads to or it teaches us something new. So from that chunk of Titanic, we found a property of a nature of the metal, that how a temperature changed the property of a metal during their working condition. The engineer were totally tested all these things, but they didn't examine that particular working condition, that what will happen when the normal temperature material will work in cold environment, and what will happen. And that happened, the Titanic sunk, and from there they found that the tendency of that material needs to be taken care. So for moving towards what are the metallurgical aspects of failure, that poor steel quality, high SNP and the low magnesium and sulfur ratio. A metallurgical analysis done on the hull steel revealed a magnesium silicon ratio was 6:8:1, which was too low compared to a quality steel like ASTM A36. So that was the metallurgical another kind of aspects which lead to the failure of that particular material. And why it came? Because that particular Titanic was sunk. Then these kind of things arises, that we need to maintain all these things. Then low magnesium silicon ratio, sulfur ratio cannot remove the sulfur from the steel. That the another point of view which was considered. As a result, what was happened, the sulfide form, the brittle sulfide reduced the impact property. What I told you, the transformation from the ductile to brittle transition, and that is just because of that sulfide which reduces its impact property. As that engineer was very confident about their product, that they created a tremendous product by experimenting all the things, but nature and our destiny always telling us you need to do more something to improve yourself. So that was the result, what was the after that sunk to be improved, and that was the biggest example for the engineering era in the transportation, and every aspect to be considered. That is the particular material working environment condition that must to be need to be take care, that after the making of product, how it will sustain that particular working environment and maintain the quality of that product. So at lower temperature, metal and alloys loses their ductility and become brittle. As I told you, that due to the iceberg, that is the Atlantica conditions was very cold, so that condition was arises, that is the ductile to brittle transition temperature, that is called the DBPT. It is dedicated factor, and that is the main reason why that particular Titanic was sunk. So we need to think about that, and that is the particular point by which the particular thing is to be maintained. And the failure analysis formal progressive mode, that is what will they all extract from that. The formation, as we talked about, the formation of the brittle sulfide inclusion due to the low magnesium sulfur ratio, high ductile to brittle transition temperature. The steel become very brittle at a low temperature, and that the brittleness lead to that particular failure. And that impact property testing of the Titanic exhibit brittle behavior. So that why the Titanic was sunk. The brittle fracture on collision with the iceberg in the chilling water temperature -2 degree at the time of collision. As I said, the working temperature of that particular metal was changed from one position to another condition, right? So due to that, they change their tendency. That material have the tendency to change from one state to another state due to that particular temperature, down temperature, the chilling water temperature, and that what happened, and that is the things that collision was taking place, and the breakage of and shrinking was happened. And so all these things came from that particular failure analysis. So now what happened is that the particular modern cruise ship, the modern cruise as are more luxurious as the Titanic, use of what happened after that particular Titanic, they learn and they exhibit or execute to improve that particular property of that particular material as are more luxurious as the Titanic. Use of advanced materials such as fiber reinforced composite FRP, laminated composite, high strength steel, non-ferrous alloys, better safety due to improved design and material used therein, combined with advanced navigation system. So that is how we mankind improving ourselves from one defeat to the success in that particular. So defeat means is nothing that we are losing everything. We are taking something from that to improve ourselves, and that is how the mankind improving themselves day by day and reaching that particular level of state that we are traveling into now space for the transportation. So that the thing, that the requirement, that the eagerness, that the starvation between in mankind lead to that particular things, and that is from the failure to the success. And then what happened? The electronic revolution came around, and then everything world was changing. The world start changes their scenario from the very bigger part to the smallest components. So before inventions, that the silicon, the particular material silicon, the heart of every electronic component that I'm using in front of you, that there's a mic, that mic also containing that particular silicon, and that camera is also, and that particular PC, UPS is CPU, UPS, everything is having that kind of component now. So before invention of the silicon chip, electromagnetic computer were developed, and that the development leads to a very bigger size of the component, and after invention of that silicon, that the bigger size of component reduces its size, and nowadays in front of me there is a CPU unit which is mostly a half of that particular at that time of 10 years ago. Now they are also improving, as we have seen also in front of us, that the improvement due to that chip, that our TV electronic gadget size are limiting themselves. That you can assume that the time of the television at that time, that is the CRT screens, now there is a LED or OLED screens which lead to a very thin in size. So that is just happened because of these kind of material introductions. So how it works, that how it invented, that is from their changes from step to step. The Howard Markey electromechanical computer in 1940, that was about 5 ton due to that electromechanical computer, and after the introduction of silicon, it reduces the size and the shape and the weight also. So 5 ton 8 into 51 feet and 500 miles of wire. So that was the thing we reduce it with the help of that particular material. So that is how I want to tell you that why these particular materials are very much important to revolve the human behavior, revolve the mankind situation and the working conditions. So IBM computer in 1959, that is 33 feet long, that invention by that particular IBM company. The invention of a metallurgical process, zone refining, that can produce high purity silicon lead to development of semiconductor chips. From that prospects that the refining of that particular material lead to that kind of chips, small chips, and that chips development of smaller and smaller silicon chip and miniaturization that LED led to the today's computer, and that is the revolution from that particular bigger size to a very tiny and small size. As you can see, there is a particular mouse that is the in front of me. There is a keyboard. That you can see there is a watch in my hand also. These are just because of that particular materials. I have a smartphone now, so their whole world is limited in our palm due to just because of this electronic revolution. And that is how it works. So you can see that is the communication and the entertainment. These all the things, as you can see in this figure, smaller and smaller microchips had brought the whole world on a palm of top. आज हर एक चीज़ को इस पर्टिकुलर मटेरियल्स की मदद से हमने पूरी दुनिया के अपने हाथों में इकट्ठा करना शुरू किया। और आप देख सकते हैं कि पहले ट्राइपॉड थे, एयरपॉड थे, अब बहुत सारी छोटी छोटी चीज़ें हो गई है। और आज के डेट में जो मोबाइल है वो तो मतलब हर एक चीज़ को इन्वॉल्व कर लिया है। तो सारी चीज़ों का संग्रह एक मोबाइल में ही हो गया है। तो वो हो कैसे पाया? Just because of invention of that particular materials. So the advent of the new electronic, optical and optoelectronic material has given a new dimension to the entertainment. So as I said earlier, that my mechanical computers were invented that are the very much in the size, weight and height also. So due to just introduction of that particular materials, we have created this whole component in a very small size, and then it hold in our palm also. So what was the key factor of this? Obviously we created these things, and we are using all these things. But in earlier lectures I told you that we need to create a material which particular after decomposing of that particular material in the nature, it should enhance the nature or help the nature rather than to creating the disharmony in the nature. So what was the e-waste problem to consider with the rich materials now? The way we talked about the materials, we talked about the products, where these products are going now. So they are going into the nature, and if we not taking care of that thing, in the later on these things will definitely provide some kind of problem in the nature. So there is an article from this particular site, and whether we are technology addicts or not, rapidly changing and developing electronic grid constitute a new type of waste that is growing in globally electrical and electronic or e-waste. So creating material is not the only solution for developing ourselves. To maintaining that particular things is also necessary, that what is exactly we required, and the thing which we required which also help to the nature. It not mean that we human just use that particular thing and then let it be to the environment, environment taking care of that, whether it is decomposed or it is not. Then who will suffer it? We human being will suffer that. So now this is the time we need to think to create a kind of a material which after decomposing of that particular material, that will particularly help to rebuild the nature, not to harm the nature. to harm the nature. So manufacturers aim to produce new and refurbished electronic products that can catch the attention of the customers. Obviously, in this competitive industrial market, the most of all of the companies are doing on that thing to creating or refurbishing the electronic product to attract the attention of the customer. But this is not the consistent with the idea of sustainability and sustainable consumption. Also, it leads to increase the e-waste, that we are creating that particular material, after some time of period, after the 6 months of the 1 year, we replace that particular material, and that is lead to the e-waste. So where it goes into the sea, it goes into the landfilling. That is not adaptable by that particular nature, but they are taking care, but they are but they are throwing over there, and what is happening is the total contamination in the water, the water level of that particular ground level of the richness of that particular ground is totally wasted. So that things we need to take care, that why we are how we maintain that sustainability consumption also. So if we keep this mentality, we will realize that our nature resources are not infinite. So that the thing we need to take care of that thing, that all the material which we are taking care as a base material, core material from the nature, that is in the limited edition. So we need to think how we use that particular resource to enrich that we are taking something from the nature, what we are returning to the nature, not in the name of waste, but in the way to enrich the particular nature. That the thing we need to taking care of that. So electronic devices not only need ores and natural resources to be produced, but they need energy to recharge. So obviously that the main thing, that the main issue with the particular electronic gadgets or the materials, they need extra power to generate our themselves. As we can take the example of that particular electronic gadgets, after that is this computer is also, this mobile phone is also, if we not charge this particular mobile phone, that it will not work. So that charging is the solution to particular things, and that particular you can say this computer is also running by that particular. So that particular electronic device not only need ores and natural resources to be produced, but they need energy to be recharged. And recharging, I told you about that particular equipment which are in front of me, that are run by that particular you can say electronic by the electric power, and that particular things. And you can say we will be talking about that in this scenario, that we have created the solar system. That solar system, that particular solar panel, which is also operated by the energy, that is the sun energy, then that particular material have ability to create that electricity. So these are the things which we need to take care of that. So the solution to reduce the carbon footprint, what is the particular that point is to be considered, that is related to our environment, and that carbon footprint or the amount of greenhouse gases, primarily carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere by human activity, can be mainly reduced by recycling. So that the thing we need to take care to, that if we are creating a kind of material, it need to be available, it need to have that kind of property, or it have some kind of that tendency to be recycled, not to decompose into the nature, that create the kind of sending the you can say the carbon footprints and the greenhouse gases problem in the environment, which lead to the increasing the temperature of our environment, and that's a problem which we are facing it now to the global warming, and that we are rising the temperature of our mother earth due to these kind of waste which we are throwing into the nature without taking care of that. So how we need to take care of that things. So we need to think that we need to take care, that we need to create that particular materials which are made which are to be sustainable, and the sustainability we need to be take care that particular do not affect the particular environment. So the using recycled material instead of ore and fossil fuel to produce goods will play a major role in the production of earth resources, as I telling you earlier, and so on. Time by time I'm telling you that what are the requirement nowadays. We are going to talk about that materials, and we are going to discuss about the material side, what is all about this, how it works, how the atoms are considering themselves to combine the material, how the properties are working, how we examine that properties, what are the advanced materials. But in somewhere these things need to be considered, that we extract lots of resources from the Mother Earth. Now what we are replacing, what we are returning is just a carbon footprint and harm environment. So we need to think, and we need to create in that our mind before starting this subject, before starting to read this particular thing, the materials engineering, that where we need to focus. We need to focus to make and improve, to create and improve material which is need to be recycled and to reuse and to maintain the earth resources. Not only to create a new and just spending all the resources from the earth, and after the spending all these things, what will happen? The earth will lose its hopes, and you never know what will happen, as we are seeing that the glaciers are melting just because of the rising of the temperature of this carbon footprint and the greenhouse gases problem. So we engineer need to be taking care of that and keep that thing in our mind, that we need to create that kind of material which is to be recycled from the existing particular materials, not to create a new that will harm the particular environment. So what is happening with that particular environment? How can metal mining impact that particular environment? As I talked about earlier, that is about the e-waste, and now we are talking about the impact on the environment of that particular mining. I am just telling these things because we need, as a future of this particular Mother Earth, or as a future of this engineering, we need to take care of that particular nature also, not only the human being. Yes, we are taking care of human being just with helping the nature. As we help the nature, nature will revert to us. But if we harm the nature, how long it will help us, we don't know. So that's the thing we need to consider, that we need to mention all these things in our mind, kept in our mind, that to create or to extract the metals in that particular scenario. So what are the impacts on the environment? How can a metal mining impact the environment? So as we talked earlier, that the metals are coming from the earth sources. We are digging deep and deeper and deeper to extract the ores of the metal, which we are digging into the earth, and then making earth a resource-free earth. You can say that we are digging into that, and that extracting the metals. So what is the operation? So operations and waste product associated with the metal extraction and processing are the principal cause of environmental concern about the metal mining. So what is the main issues? That the extracting process of that particular materials from the Mother Earth, that is the main concern. We human beings are so greedy to increasing our wealth that we are harming our nature. One side we are improving ourselves as a developed or as a modern humankind, and another side we are downing our nature from where we started. So you can see the downing of that particular nature will definitely lose someday the mankind. So we need to keep this in the balance. How we will make that balance? We need to consider the the production of that particular materials, the extraction of that particular material, by which how we are extracting, how we are digging into that deep particular material, and after digging, what we are doing for that particular area to again enrich, to create that kind of material again. But nowadays what we are doing, we are just digging and extracting and leaving that is alone. And after, as you can see, if I remove this particular myself from this body, what is the work of this body? It is nothing to do. And that is the same thing is happening with that particular Mother Earth. We are extracting their resources, the enrichment resources, and we are not giving all these things. So that is the thing we need to consider, that we need to maintain the environment as well as our productivity to increase the to improve the humankind. As I told you, the ancient time of that particular engineering is still that particular metals are standing and showing their precisions in that work. If you think that particular metal are still in the work to improving that things, how we require that particular materials. So the second thing is the physical distribution to the landscape, that the changing the particular area, the particular landscape, that is that from one place to another place. Soil and the water contaminations, that the particular problem, that the nature is need to be regulated themselves by time. But what we are doing from the industry, we are sending the garbages, we are sending the waste waters into the water and the soil, that the contaminate that particular mother nature, and that the main problem is arising, and that is why the total our environment is harming. So the air contamination is also the public safety. That is the last thing, the public safety. How if we don't care about our mother nature, how it will taking care of that. That's why I am telling you, the mother is the only one who is taking care of that child. But how long it will sustain that thing if she didn't have anything? But still we have some time. As a responsible son of that particular Mother Earth, we need to take care of that thing. We need to think about that, how to maintain the balance between the human civilization and the nature. That why I am telling you, because we are the entity of that particular Mother Nature, and if we continuously harming that things, that it will not work properly for us, and it will lead to the drainage to the mankind, and the circle will again reach to that particular stone age. If we don't maintain all these things in a balanced manner, then the civilization will restart again, as the mother nature have the tendency, if they think that they are lacking in somewhere, they will recycle themselves, and when they will recycle, we the human being will totally affected by that particular thing. So we need to take care, we need to think about all the things. So for this, I am now concluding my total introduction things. We will discuss on that particular or more, that how this environmental affecting the material, and why we require that particular things to be considered for making a healthy environment and sustainable environment, which leads to the mankind up to that level where we can live in the coexistence between the nature and the man. So from this I am going to discuss that how that the environmental we will maintain that things. So earlier in the slides we discussed that the starvation of that particular mankind is need to be taken care. So from this now I am going to conclude all these things, and we will meet in the next class. Thank you.